You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
What is up, good people? Welcome to today's episode. Today, I am talking to my dude, Mr. Scott Hamilton, who I've been meaning to get on this show for quite some time. He is one of the hosts of the Effects Loop podcast and an actual acoustical engineer, so he knows how this stuff works, whereas I sit here and go, I think mahogany is a tone wood that imparts certain woody characteristics to your sound. Yeah, this guy actually knows about spaces and how to engineer them to perform in a certain way and how to isolate your spaces and all this stuff. And we get into some high-level overview of all of that and his background and blah, blah, blah. It's a really, really nerdy, wonderful episode, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. And if you want to hear him and some other folks from the guitar podcast universe, Chris Carter, Jonathan Diaz, these folks have been supporters and listeners of this podcast and many of the other guitar podcasts for years and years and years. In fact, which we get into on this episode, Jonathan Diaz is responsible for Cardboard Blake, or at least the physical manifestation of Cardboard Blake. And if you don't know what that is, well, we'll get into it on this episode. But before we just dive straight in, I just want to remind everybody that if you are planning on making any purchases coming up and they are gear related for yourself or a loved one for the holiday season, please, 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 please use the links tonemob.com/Sweetwater for anything Sweetwater carries, or tonemob.com/Reverb for anything a little more off the wall. That seriously helps out a ton. And I know you've heard this forever. You've heard me say it. But every time I do say it on the podcast, people go, oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. And then they use it. And it really, really helps out a lot. So there you go. That's the one plug for this episode. Well, until later. But without further ado, let's get into this one with my dude, Scott Hamilton. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes, though probably not today. Almost certainly not today. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have long overdue Mr. Scott Hamilton from the Effects Loop podcast and Acoustics. How's it going, dude?
It's going all right. I'm having a very Portland-like day in Chicago, I have to say.
Yeah?
I think I brought the weather back with me after I saw you 2 weeks ago.
Did you? Yeah, you look like you got some extra wax in your mustache there, and maybe you're riding around on a bike with a large front wheel, perhaps?
Not that bad. It's just misting rain and 50 degrees. So
okay. Yeah, well, that's pretty Portland, actually. We're not doing too bad in the weather department today. It's a bit damp, but it's nice. It's nice. It's 61, so I'm feeling good.
Wow. It's better than we got.
So
Come on,
Scott,
Chicago, get your act together.
Well, the whole nation's been saying that for years. I don't think it's going to happen at this point.
We've been saying it for years too.
Don't worry, Portland. Portland doesn't have any room to talk. So, but yeah, for the listeners, this has been something that's needed to happen for quite a while. Scott's been a part of the various guitar podcast communities for ever, basically since they were a thing, pretty much. And he's got his own podcast, but most importantly, he always laughs at us all with our odd acoustic theories, because he's actually, what's your official title? Like, I don't want to butcher that too.
It's kind of funny because I got to make up my own title. Okay. So it's different on LinkedIn, it's different on Facebook, and it's different everywhere. I say, I'm an acoustics engineer. And that's actually my education is in acoustics and sound, which was part of a pilot program when I was at Purdue. And I lead the Chicago office. I founded it about 3.5 years ago of Air Acoustics, which is a firm I worked for 12 years ago.
Okay.
Out of Toronto. And I was hopping between jobs and getting real tired of the one I was at, or just feeling the need to move. Let's just say that. I actually really liked what I did there. I just felt that it was time to leave. And so I called up my old compatriots and said, hey, I want to come back, but I want to stay here. How do we make that work?
Okay. Gotcha. So
Yeah.
they're like, let's start a Chicago office. There's air and acoustics in Chicago. We'll need you to manage all of those things. Right?
Yeah. So fun story. Air Acoustics is actually spelled AERCOUSTICS.
Okay.
As in like aeronautical acoustics.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a made up word, but it's still there. And so a lot of people add an extra O in there to make it air acoustics. But anyway, it's a running joke we have between me and a few of our other guys of just how many typos we can find in different things. So, I mean, even I had an article I was a part of get published last week for what I did over at the Academy Awards Museum. And they spelled their name wrong in it after interviewing me multiple times and all that kind of stuff. So we had to have them correct it. So that was one of our, we found the joke and we called them out on it.
So I wanted to have you on for multiple reasons. Obviously, you've got your own show, which is, has become, I don't know what the best way to describe it is. It's like there's all podcasters are ragtag, but you're like the head of the crew over there seemingly, but by accident. How did that come about?
So it actually it spiraled off of, so Chris Carter used to do the Carter's Talk Tone podcast.
Yes.
Wanted to be kind of done with it. Like it just kind of ran its course and he's like, I want to reboot it, but I want to do it differently. He pulls Jonathan Diaz in. And then they're like, man, we kind of need someone who knows what they're talking about is I think the kind of phrase, or we need some credibility. And so Diaz is like, let's pull Scott in. And like Diaz and I just became friends through guitar community stuff, meeting at NAMM, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's how I just got connected. And I don't really think of myself as the leader of it, but at some days it kind of feels like that. It just, I seem to be driving a lot just because I kind of have that personality.
Yeah, Diaz is probably gonna get mad at me that I had you on first. I think is probably what's gonna happen. He's gonna really berate me for this because he's the one that for all of the listeners out there who have been with us for a few years, you may remember a cardboard version of me being toted around the Summer NAMM floor, or at least me talking about it. And Diaz was the one that managed that entire operation and gave Cardboard Blake a home for quite a while, at least as far as I'm aware.
So that's actually part of the secret. Maybe we were spilling the beans too early and this should be Patreon content.
Oh no.
It wasn't just Diaz.
It wasn't just Diaz. Well, he's the only one talked to me about it. Oh man, there's so many layers to this podcast onion.
There may have been a troll Facebook account that's been haunting you for a long time.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I might have been behind that.
Oh, that was you. I just assumed it was Diaz. Okay.
That's been me this whole time.
So in addition...
Actually, I'm not... And I believe you blocked me from posting in your group on that account recently.
I did?
Or someone did. Yeah, I'm not allowed to post on it anymore.
I didn't do it. Not on purpose, anyway.
I don't know. I tried logging into it for the first time in a year just because I was bored. And yeah, it's like the account's locked out now and stuff. So
is it locked out as? So let's back up a little bit.
I can log into it. I just can't post my
in
posts
the tone mod specifically.
Yeah.
Weird. Well, I'll have to investigate that.
It's fine. It's a joke that's ran its course. So maybe we need to.
That's true. Cardboard Blake's head. Well, let's back up a little bit. So not only was there a Cardboard Blake, it wasn't just for no reason. It was a thing that did end up going to charity. Mm-hmm. So it was a really cool thing, but also it's just a funny thing that everybody remembers is Diaz carrying this Cardboard Blake around NAMM. Actually just talked to Greg Koch on the Chasing Tone podcast. And I was like, do you remember? He's like, I do remember. That was weird. So I have Cardboard Blake's head around here somewhere because at the last Summer NAMM I was at, Diaz didn't want to give Cardboard Blake a home anymore, and I certainly didn't want to because of the troll account that's been going around for all these years. But I thought it was Diaz. Turns out it was Scott this whole time. Man, comes full circle.
Yeah, it was an out of character thing for me, wasn't it?
It was a little bit. It just definitely seemed like more of a Diaz thing to do, for sure. But hey, you did a good job because I didn't see it coming. Look at that.
Yeah. So we'll start this off with a confessional. Yeah. So the effects loop, check us out. And I guess this is the plug for it. But
there you go.
We just do whatever's new. That's really what we could kind of focus on there. And so it's a little different from a lot of the other podcasts that are more like interview focused, like this one, or like 60 Cycle Hum has their niche with the used gear and all those kind of things. But we tried to find what could we do that was a little different. And that's kind of the format that came out, and it's been fun.
Right on, man.
Gosh,
right
we're
on.
3 years into it now.
That's wild. Has it been 3 years already? Wow.
I think so.
That's crazy.
I think we just had like episode 140 something.
I have to remember that like 2021 is almost over.
I know.
So the last 2 years, I feel like it's not that they don't count, but they almost don't count from a mental perception standpoint because they're the longest and shortest years ever. It felt like we were in a time warp or something. So strange.
Yeah, there's a meme going around where it's like the last week has certainly been a year.
That's very accurate.
I'm as busy as I think I've ever felt, and at the same time, I don't leave my house for like 3 or 4 days at a time. It's a very interesting phase of life we've been in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been hard to get a gauge on anything. It's like, we're recording this right before Halloween, and it's just like, what? It's Halloween. This is odd.
Shoot, that's Sunday. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Crazy. But the real reason I wanted to get you on, beyond just talking to you, and like you just were in Portland, we went to a show together, we had a good time. It was actually because of your background. So maybe let's dive into your background and talk about what you do on a professional day-to-day basis. And then I can dive into some other things that I have kind of mentally prepared for you.
Sure. I guess the formal introduction is I'm an acoustics consultant. And I've been doing that for 12 years now, like straight out of school. And so what we do is on a professional level, I focus mainly in architecture, but there's various forms of acoustical consulting that I help people design buildings that sound good. Mm-hmm. Whether it's being managing things like making places quiet, making sure that speech is comprehensible in them, or anything from a concert hall all the way down to literal industrial properties that are next door to people that don't want to hear it, or train tracks, or all those kind of things that you kind of gotta manage the noise side of it, or create a musical environment that's high performing. So I've got a few pretty cool projects under my belt. Not to brag, but like Wrigley Field's renovation here in Chicago was me. I led the acoustics effort on that for phases 1 through 3, and the master planning on that. Done a few concert halls all over the country, such as like the Alliance Theater down in Atlanta, the Bella Concert Hall in Calgary over at Mount Royal University. The new concert hall at University of Wisconsin I was involved in. So all sorts of stuff. It's been pretty cool.
So when you're optimizing a space, like for let's just say like a performance place, do you have to try to like strike some sort of balance between, say, a musical performance with a full orchestra or a stand-up comedian? Is there like different things to take into consideration, or is it all kind of the same?
I mean, they're wildly different. So nowadays with the economics that they are, and construction's not cheap, land's not cheap. If you're going to build a performance venue, you need one that's open 200 days a year.
Totally.
You can't have, a place that does a show on Saturday and that's the only reason they exist. And so there aren't really purpose-built buildings anymore. Now, there's a few exceptions to that, like the Elba Philharmonie in Germany that just got built. Even that's a multi-use, even though it's a famous like orchestra concert hall. So naturally, nowadays, the name of the game is how do we make it excellent in both those scenarios? A stand-up comedian needs, frankly, a room that's pretty dry in terms of you can comprehend what's going on, free from distractions, because there's not actually like a stable set of noise in that area. And then something like a concert hall for whatever city's Philharmonic comes in, that room needs to bloom. It needs to let that sound come out and project. Frankly, no one wants a microphone on stage with any of that. So the room needs to naturally project that sound and distribute it. And it needs to be even. It needs to be a consistent experience for all the patrons. Though that's kind of a lie. Where you sit in the room does matter, especially in natural acoustic environments. Less so in, sound reinforcement systems. And frankly, usually those bands also need to moderately be able to handle a jazz band come in, which is semi-amplified.
Yep.
It probably will have, if not a singer-songwriter at some point, a full band. The only thing short that probably it won't have is a Metallica or one of those kind of things. Not so much because the room can't support that kind of music, but just simply because the seating arrangement doesn't.
Right. Not great for mosh pits.
So, people don't sit for Metallica.
No, not usually. No.
Though their fans are getting older, so who knows?
There have been some rock bands that have came through the Arlene Schnitzer here in Portland, which is our big concert hall, which is probably relatively small compared to most things. But there's definitely been rock bands come through there. Actually, I saw Merle Haggard there back in the day. That was an interesting show to see there. But it's interesting to think about all the different types of performances and what they require. You don't really want a lot of reverb if you're trying to tell a joke. Everybody
no, I mean, but at the same time, you don't want a dead room. Mm-hmm. And so there's aspects there too of how much crowd feedback do you want? Because I mean, this is the classic problem with a lot of concerts these days, at least for me, is I have to wear earplugs at everything now. Yeah. Because the sound system has to be so loud because the crowd is so stinking loud.
Yes.
And then there's this battle. You're actually having this volume war between the band and the crowd now, because, back in the day, you hear these stories of the Beatles showing up and no one could actually hear the Beatles because the crowd was screaming so loud.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that give and take, but now we're experiencing, these 115, 120 decibel shows. It's not good for you. You're going to blast out your ears being in that environment.
It's funny that you bring that up specifically, because at the show that you and I were at, that Rest and Kelly show, you probably didn't notice as much because you had earplugs in, but there was a couple behind us that was excessively annoying. Basically, I'll never understand.
Is this the lady who kept dropping her phone?
No, she wasn't.
Okay.
She was just kind of clumsy. No, this is somebody that would have been to your right as you face the stage, but behind you. It was basically just a couple on a date, which there's nothing wrong with that. It was the fact that they needed to go have a discussion there, like a very loud discussion, because there's a band playing, and I'm like, you guys should have went to a dinner, because they're just like, I was this and doing this and this in Nashville, and I would do and I'm like, just shut up. No one can. It'd be one thing if you're like singing along with the singer or whatever, but no one came to hear you talk about your day. Those are always the most annoying people at a concert to me. But anyway,
with all due respect, I don't think we should talk during concerts at all, but that's me. I will say I've been to shows of all the like, and like, so I go to a lot of formal music as well. Mm-hmm. Philharmonic concerts, those kind of things. I try to stay plugged into that world too. Mainly for business reasons. I mean, just simply buttering up these kind of clients and staying in the know with those kind of groups and experiencing how those shows are run. And that helps inform what I do with the design, even though I'm still, I mean, I'm a praise and worship guitar player at a mega church in Chicago. So like, that's where my head starts then with music, and it just goes from there. So when you're at those shows, do not talk. If you're whispering, if you unwrap a cough drop, everyone's staring at you, right?
Right.
And one of the first concert halls I worked on is Corner Hall in downtown Toronto. And that hall is designed where the background noise level is the threshold of human hearing. And I got thrown on the job because I was 22 and I could hear things my boss, who was 60, can't hear anymore.
Right.
Just by natural like
Age.
biology. Yeah. And he's had significant hearing loss and things over the years. So there, there's stuff like that. But we were actually at the point of, does this light fixture make noise? Can you hear that? Like that's the level we were trying to get the quiet down to. And to be honest, I haven't designed a hall like that since. But sorry, my phone was ringing. I'll turn that up. I'll make sure that's off. That level of quiet forces you to have such a rapt attendance to the show. So I was at the Hard Hat concert, which is just a term basically when you're commissioning a room very early on. They'll host a show for everyone who worked on it.
Okay.
So the architect's there, every contractor's there, everyone from the university or whatever organizations behind it, major sponsors, that kind of stuff. They'll come to a Hard Hat concert, and they had a string quartet, and they were doing a piece, and there was a solo for the violin player. And I remember the soloist finishing their note, letting the bloom happen, and then you literally heard, and you found out
from the player,
creak. Mm-hmm. Everyone was holding their breath because we were trying to be into this performance. And so those kind of things really do play into what makes a room happen. But yeah, anyway, that's how quiet stuff gets. And that's the level of attention you need to focus on is like, do your chair squeak? Do all those kind of things? And that's what that type of music demands. And now, I mean, I'm looking at something like what we had at like, we went to a show and actually Rustin Kelly wasn't that loud, all things considered.
No, it really wasn't.
But if you would go see, I don't know, name your current pop act, it would be obscene.
Mm-hmm.
Just how loud it is.
Even going to, it was weird. I really hit the concerts hard once I could. So I went to that Rustin Kelly show. Next weekend, I saw my friends in Keonashi play. And then the weekend after that, I went and saw Thrice. And it was like progressive volume levels. It was like Rustin Kelly wasn't terribly loud. I didn't feel like I needed hearing protection, especially standing in the back where we were. Mm-hmm. Keonashi, I was like, ooh, they're a little bit louder in this venue. And they're a wild band. They're a pretty wild band. And then Thrice at the Roseland, I was like, oh, I should have brought earplugs. Jeez, this is...
Yeah. When I saw Thrice, I wore earplugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would recommend anybody who's really into music, go buy a pair of... there's so many different versions of it now, but essentially like there's dubs, there's Eros, there's a bunch of different... Etymonics makes a pair. A lot of them are ear filters. They're not true earplugs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so what they do is they have a more balanced taper in terms of how much they shut down sound coming into you. And you can get them at like 10 decibels or 20 decibels instead of, your foam earplugs are something like 30 decibels of attenuation. So sometimes you're like, yeah, it's too damped, and it's too much, attenuation coming into your head. And I want to hear it a little bit better, even though, I'll also tell people wear earplugs walking into the show, and your brain will start recalibrating. Oh. So you won't feel like you suddenly just put something over your head and you're shutting it out. Because you get that thing, you put earplugs in and all you hear, it just gets really woof, 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 woof. Mm-hmm. It's kind of how everything sounds. If you get the filters, that helps a lot. And it's still loud. It's just not as obscenely loud.
Do you have a preferred brand?
Your best option, they all use kind of like the same filtering element.
Yeah.
So your best option is go to your audiologist, get a mold made with a filter in it for about $50 to $100.
Is that all it is?
Molded to your ear, and that's perfect.
Oh, I'm doing that. Yep. I have hearing loss in my family. My dad's ears have been bad. He's literally had hearing aids almost as long as I can remember. And he's only like 50, 55 or something. So he's had hearing aids since his 30s, I think. And my grandpa on his side also. I don't seem to have that genetic hearing loss that they do. But I've always, especially when I was working in like heavier industries, I was always the guy. I'm putting earplugs in when I'm going to hammer on something or whatever. And I've kind of haven't gotten away from that when I'm doing that kind of activity, because I'm like, if I'm going to lose hearing, I don't want it to be from a hammer.
Mhm.
What a lame, lame thing to experience, you know? But I have always struggled with them at concerts, especially because I do like to get a little bit rowdy. And I feel like I've always felt like it's shutting off my experience a little bit, but I know it's not good for my ears, and my ears are how I make my money these days. So I need to protect those things.
Well, and then you have the other fun one. An architect I used to work with pointed this out to me. You know how, like, if you're at a club, you're at any kind of place, and you can't hear somebody, so you lean into them and you put your ear by their mouth.
Of
You realize
course.
that's now someone shouting right at your ear.
Mm-hmm.
So the level that you're exposing yourself to be able to hear over a nightclub is just like, that's the most damaging thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Let alone just like listening to music at any kind of place. I mean, I throw nightclubs out just because, like, that's where I kind of noticed I did that most. Mostly because I'm a 6'7" man trying to talk to girls. So I'm bending over a lot to try to hear them when I used to hang out in those kind of environments. But that hasn't been a problem for a while.
At least 2 years, right? That's not really been an issue, right?
Oh gosh, it hasn't been an issue in like 7 or 8 years, but whatever.
No, I hear you. I hear you. So, excuse me. So, do you have much experience with, you talked about concert halls and things like that a lot. Have you done much with recording studios?
I've done a few. So, I mean, if we got to list credentials here, I did Hubbard Radio in their station renovation here in Chicago. So that would have been the Mix, the Drive, and another, I can't remember what the third station is. And anyway, major radio station here in Chicago, as well as WMBI's whole studio, which is Moody Public Radio. So chances are anywhere you live, there's probably a Moody Radio affiliate. So we did their whole studio suites, as well as a bunch of others all over the place. But yeah, so we've done a number of radio, done some amateur stuff. I'm working on a live streaming studio right now. So you name it, throw it at me. We've done it.
You've done it. You've done it all. So
Yeah.
this is where I want to get for the audience. This is because most of the audience are players that play at home, much like what I'm seeing your setup is on the screen here. It's just like a regular house type situation, or room or apartment type situation. Let's just try to make this as general as we can for most people. I know this is really hard to do, but for most people who are just playing in your average bedroom, what's the number one thing they can do in there to make that space? Like the main complaint is always isolation, and I kind of know a little bit about that. But B, just to make it perform as well as it can on, your average budget, I suppose. I know that's a very, very general and vague question.
So let's break it down into 3 different categories. There is room acoustics, i.e., how sound in a room behaves, how it interacts, how effectively how it echoes, or lack thereof echoes. That's one category. There's the noise aspect, which is just simply with the absence of my activity, how loud is the space, what's going on. And then the last one would be your isolation. A lot of people like to use the word soundproofing. That's one of the first myths I like to dispel, is there is no such thing as soundproofing. There is reducing sound. There's no magical material that suddenly stops sound. There's just materials that stop more sound than another. And so a lot of people like to think there's things like, hey, if I just put these acoustical panels up on the wall, I'm going to soundproof my room. That doesn't work. Oh, if I just put this magic foam in my wall cavities, that's going to work. And that's not really the case. So there's a lot of, anytime someone starts selling you a magic fix, that's your first sign that you're being kind of conned. Because there's a lot of snake oil in this world. And acoustics is one of those sciences that seems especially prone to snake oil. So it's that's one of those first things that kind of, does it pass the sniff test? And then there are legitimate products out there too. Legitimate companies make great products, and then their marketing team starts throwing all this stuff out, and just starts messing with people too. And so I guess, where do we start? If we're talking a bedroom, honestly, the worst thing, the first thing I would say for most people is chances are what you're messing with is too big for the space you're operating in.
Okay.
So if you're recording in a bedroom, if you're bringing your Marshall half stack in there, there's not much I can do because that thing is just loud. There's a fixed loudness that thing creates. So unless I can get that thing quieter, realistically with a normal home, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to make that tame without an attenuator circuit or something like that in that amp.
So when you say like there's not a lot you can do, you're referring to both like the acoustics in the room and the isolation that you're not going to get when you have a Marshall half stack.
I mean, so if we talk about room acoustics, right? So echoing, things like that, it's the persistence of sound in a space, and then there's a coloration of sound that comes with that. It's directly proportional to how big the room is. So the bigger the room, the more echo you have. And it's inversely proportional to how much absorption's in the room, i.e. things that don't reflect sound. It gets into them and it gets dispelled as heat. Most people don't think about that, but your speakers generate heat by because that's what excess energy is.
Right. Friction.
It's literally it is literally friction happening. It's just, we don't get burned by touching an acoustic panel because we don't think it's not that much energy. It's not like your brake pads or something like that. So with that, we're talking small rooms. So you don't really need much absorption to not have a lot of reverberation in that room. And frankly, most people take advantage of small rooms to just kill all reverberation in a room by saying, let's throw up acoustic foam or acoustical panels or anything absorptive. I know a lot of people love to throw carpets or blankets up on a wall. It's tough to actually get any real performance out of stuff like that. Carpeting is not as absorptive at anything low frequency or mid frequency. It's all high frequency absorption because it's really thin. So you don't really, you'll feel like the high end stuff. You'll hear your consonants, things like that kind of dissipate or not get knocked around. But you won't deal with any of the wooliness of bass in a room. Thin blankets on a wall don't do anything, much of anything. If I am hanging something on in a project, nominally, I'm looking at anything from 2 to 4 inches thick when I'm looking at some of these panels and things like that, and they're porous materials, usually fiberglass.
Mm-hmm.
I specify fiberglass, one, because it doesn't light on fire no matter what you do to it. And that's a big factor in my world, is making sure the place doesn't burn down. There's always, every couple of years, there's a nightclub that burns down because they use packing foam, which is a oil-based product, lights on fire real easily. You have a concert next to it, pyrotechnics hit it, whole club's up in flames.
Like packing foam, like what shows up in your box when you order an amp. Really? Okay.
I've seen that. There used to be a lot more, we call it like the egg crate foam. You've probably seen that in time. People love to put that on the walls. It's not good. There are acoustic foams out there. Auralex makes a decent product that is fire rated. However, there's a lot of knockoff Auralex out there in the world too, that is not fire rated. And a lot of people put the knockoff stuff up because they're trying to save money. Again, it's not safe. Not to mention a lot of that stuff tends to off gas when it's in sunlight. So UV rays will break it down, and it will start off gassing, or the fire retardant material will go away. So you gotta be careful with that. For the average person, chances are you're gonna want to DIY what you're doing. So your best options are either trying to make a fiberglass panel yourself. Don't handle fiberglass with your bare skin, or you'll be itching for a long time.
Yes.
Mineral wool also works if you don't want to be as itchy. And then you want to fabric wrap it or something like that. You want to make sure that the fabric is breathable. So you don't want to throw something really thick on top of it, because then high frequency sound's not going to go through it. So the easy way, this has been fun with COVID testing and a COVID world, but I was very familiar with what fabrics I could blow through real easily, because that's actually that's my anecdotal test. If someone sends me a 6x6 square of this fabric to test for whatever we're doing, I just stick it up to my mouth and blow through it to see if I can feel my breath on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I had plenty of fabrics around when we had to make our own masks at home that were not good enough to be a COVID mask. But and I actually had a friend or two call me up and say, "Hey, I want to make a fake mask. What do I make the material out of?"
And you're like, "Oh, geez,
I don't really want to tell you that."
Right. Lead. Make it out of lead. Yeah. That'll work.
Well, so that's the best thing. You'll see in most studios and stuff like that, nothing goes over 4 inches. And that's simply because ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, requires that anything more than 4 inches protruding from a wall needs a guardrail so that anyone who's blind doesn't bump into it.
Oh, really?
So there's a reason. Like things like
reason.
old radiators and stuff like that used to be really thick and now they're not. That's one of the reasons why.
Okay.
Having said that, the thicker you go, the lower in frequency and more of a bass trap it can become. The other trick to get more low frequency performance out of something is actually offsetting it from the wall and having an air cavity behind it. Those are sort of those 2 tricks to kind of really maximize the performance. If you're like, I want something more flexible, go get some velour curtains, hang them up, something like that. That can do stuff too. But if you're using light curtain, it's not going to do much.
So when you say offsetting the panel, first of all, I think we should probably specify. We are kind of talking about panels here, like literal rectangle-ish shaped panels most of the time.
Yeah, they actually need to be big. That's another common thing that people don't realize is a lot of people will buy these like 1x1 squares and then they'll scatter them. They actually need to be clustered together to be effective.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you were talking about spacing them off the wall, are you talking about it would be better to have like a 3-inch panel spaced an inch off of the wall, or would it be better to have a full 4-inch panel?
I don't have a cut sheet in front of me. I don't actually know which one's better.
Okay.
But say you can only buy a 2-inch panel. If you put a 2-inch air gap behind it, it's going to be more effective than if it's flat mounted right on the wall.
Gotcha. So if you are limited by what you just have, then it's better to put an air gap there. Okay.
Yeah. Now, I'll also say a lot of people tend to overdo it when it comes to acoustic paneling and things like that. Everyone errs on the side of let's make this place like a movie theater where it is just dry and dead. And a lot of us actually do like reverberant rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta find your balance. But it's important to know too, like, look, if you're playing guitar in your bedroom and you're annoying your parents, putting acoustic panels up on the wall isn't going to fix anything.
Right. Now that is something I did know, and I have tried to tell people in various forums over there, just get some egg foam or get something like that. Won't make your significant other any happier. It won't. Like, they're still going to hear everything. It will make your room sound different. I've heard people say that too. Well, we put it up and it sounds different in the room. Well, sure. If you cover it head to, from floor to ceiling in something, it probably will change how it sounds. But that doesn't mean that sound isn't still going through the wall. And specifically, the bass frequencies are much harder to control. Like you were talking about, diffusing those in the room. That's what goes through the wall, right? The bass frequencies.
It goes through easier, yeah. But you have the other factor to think about here is audibility is really, if that's the concern you have here, when we talk about soundproofing again, air quotes, audibility is a combination of multiple factors. It's 1, how loud something is. 2, how loud it is where the person's hearing it, because that matters a lot in terms of like what's masking it or covering it up. You don't hear things that are quieter than what's already going in your room. Sort of. There's caveats there, but for general purposes here, if I'm blasting my TV, I don't hear my neighbors talking. Right?
Of course. Yeah.
I can hear my neighbors talking when they're yelling at each other, and I'm trying to work on a Zoom call. But if I'm blasting music in my place, I don't hear them because I'm masking that sound that's coming through. It has nothing to do with them.
Kind of like white noise machines when you're trying to sleep. It just kind of blocks out other stuff.
Well,
and that other stuff is still there.
I guarantee you there's a number of people who are listening to this at work that are hearing a white noise machine right now too. That's a super common thing in a lot of offices, that people will just put a bunch of white noise machines all throughout, or they'll put music, or if there's someone who like me is involved, we'll try to actually design the HVAC system to make a bit of noise. We won't try to shut up the HVAC system completely, because you want masking in your life. Because you want privacy. You don't want to hear everything going on. You don't want to hear your neighbor chewing gum at the desk next to you. And if you ever have a job where you're at a place where it's dead silent, you hear every click and clack of their keyboard. You hear them messing with their pens. You hear them breathing. That person annoys the heck out of you. So, and I've had an office like that. So it you got to design within that reason. And then, so loudness of the source, loudness of the receiver area, and then what's the wall doing in between? And so we can mess with all three of those factors in whatever economical way makes the most sense. So if the usual way for most of us is like, I can hear you playing guitar, turn down your amp. That's kind of the natural thing everyone's telling you is don't be loud. White noise machines are sometimes an option and sometimes a fix for things. And then the last thing is deal with your walls, deal with your doors, deal with your noise paths through your building.
And when you say deal with it, so I know like this is where it gets really tricky, right?
Yeah.
Like if you live in your standard house, like most of us, like we were talking about before, you just got, a 2x4 framed wall, possibly uninsulated, most likely uninsulated in most parts likely. And for an interior wall, and a couple pieces of 1/2-inch drywall on each side of it. That wall's not doing much for attenuation.
No, we have this rating system called STC rating. It's just a single number representation of how well a wall is blocking sound. So small number doesn't mean it's doing much. Big number means it's doing a lot. Wood frame building, 1/2-inch drywall, 1 layer each side, no insulations, probably somewhere around STC 40-ish. Before you start poking holes in it, before you start putting a door in it, before you start putting vents in it, all that other kind of stuff there. Let's call it leaks.
Yep.
Between an area. So first things first, plug all your leaks. That's the first fix, or and reasonably plug all your leaks. So for some people, that might be you just need to throw a mat on top of the register in the floor because sound is going through the duct to another part of your house because you have shared ducting. Right. That can be the main noise path. It could be your door, in which case you might want to either put gasketing, weather stripping, something like that on the door to start, and then you actually need to start upgrading the mass of that door to start insulating sound, or put a second door up. There are people that will sell you these STC rated doors that are really high performing. They're very expensive. Often it's cheaper to build 2 doors, and that's cheaper, and that's a more economical way to build that.
Yeah.
As I think you have on your shred shed, if I remember right, you got 2 doors on that thing.
Exactly, I do. I have 2 doors. They need sealed better, but they actually they do. My neighbors aren't mad at me, and I play loud out here, so they do work.
Yeah, and so I mean, those first things first is plug the leaks, and before you start building up the wall, because if you start building up the wall, guess your leaks become bigger and bigger of an issue as well, because that's still the primary energy path, and this is thermodynamics. Energy has to go somewhere. It can't be created or destroyed. It's only transferred, right? So if it's contained in a system, it's not transferred as much, and therefore you don't hear it somewhere else. That's all we're trying to do is keep energy in a room. And then dissipate it with your acoustic finishes and all that kind of stuff. So the rule I have for walls is mass and separation. And that's I say that so much that my clients are sick of me saying that phrase. The heavier the wall is, the better it performs. The more that there's separation between layers in a wall, the better it performs. And so bigger air gaps. Most people don't realize this, but if you're building it for the first time, a 6-inch stud gives you a deeper air gap, gives you a higher performing wall. There are things that you can do to actually decouple walls. So a lot of people think, I need to build this stoutly. And so they'll say, I had a contractor once walk up to me. He's like, so I put some extra nails in that wall for you because I knew it was a sound wall and I really needed to do it. And I went and looked at it and talked to his supervisor, and they had to tear down that wall because he just compromised it by what he was doing. Because if you overconnect something, now you have a transfer between 2 systems here,
right?
And that that energy hits the plane of the first wall. That inertia will then send that energy to the second side of the wall, and then transfer that energy out into back into the air. And so if we can decouple those 2 layers either side of the wall using things like rubber mounts, things like that, now energy doesn't transfer through it. It has a shock absorber in it. And that prevents sound from traveling through that. Or the other option for a lot of people is we build 2 studs. So those two studs don't actually connect. The same way you have two doors, you can build two studs, and you have a really thick wall. It costs more, as all these things do, but it gives you that separation between the two spaces. And then it's really an economics game between how much room you got for it, how much material you're putting up, and then how much separation you can get out of it. And that's kind of my job, is helping people navigate the economics of it more so than anything novel necessarily that I'm talking to them and saying. This mass and separation thing you can find on any internet forum talking about this.
Yes.
It's navigating the how do you do it? How do you do it well? How do you not compromise it? How do you economically do it? How do you balance the budget? How do you do it on time? That's where professionals like me come in.
So this is where we're going to get nerdy about walls. Here we
All
go.
right.
Because the shred shed actually, I learned enough about, I was mostly concerned about isolation because my neighbors are really close. My house is where my family sleeps is right on the other side of the wall, you know? And so my main thing was like, I want to be able to play loud kind of whenever I want. So I want you to give me a rough rating on how you think I did. Obviously there was budgetary constraints, you know, in there as well. I know there was things I could have done better had I had the money, but here's roughly how my walls are constructed. Essentially, the building itself is a pole barn. So it's got just T111 exterior and, you know, similar roof construction. It's just a shed. It literally is a shed. And then I know my weak point's the floor, but that was because I didn't think about what I was doing before I did it. So, but we're just going to talk about the walls. So the walls are 2x4 walls, but they are spaced out to where the wall itself is actually, instead of just being a 2x4 wall, I can't remember the exact dimensions.
So you probably have 3 5/8 is the actual dimension of a 2x4. And you probably have it in a 6-inch channel. That tends to be one of the, if you did a staggered stud where they kind of overlap each other, but they're not the same stud pattern.
It's a staggered stud. It's slightly more staggered than normal just because I only had a few poles to deal with instead of an actual whole another framed wall. It was just a few poles with some flat boards on the outside. So it is roughly what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
It might be 8 inches. I just can't remember. Okay. I have the picture of the tape measure sticking into the cavity somewhere. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I mean you're using wood studs versus a lot of commercial construction uses steel studs.
Right.
Which here's a secret for most people building at home: use steel studs.
Oh, okay.
Over wood studs. But
just because of mass, or is it because of stiffness? Okay.
They're less stiff. So they don't transfer energy through them as much. Wood buildings always have flanking issues. And flanking is where sound just kind of takes a creative path through a building structure.
Oh, I'm sure mine has
that
plenty.
Straight line of sight kind of.
I'm sure mine has plenty of those.
Yeah.
But then we got it. So I got it staggered. I have there's 2 layers of 5/8 drywall. I had each layer. I made an amazing score at a local the Restore, which is I think it's a Habitat for Humanity thing where they sell you like used construction goods or extra. I found a massive stash of acoustic caulk at my local one.
Nice.
I don't even remember, probably 100 tubes. I was like, I'll take.
No, that was actually like the non-hardening acoustic caulking.
It was. Yep.
Okay, so this is another differentiation. There's caulk, which is just, stuff that you have in a tube and it hardens and it seals up gaps.
Yep.
Does a great job. Then there's acoustical caulking. It doesn't block sound any better than anything else. What it is it stays resilient. So it can move a little bit. And it's great for situations where you're trying to have a resilient wall or something like that is ability to move a little bit.
Yeah.
It's great when you're running piping and stuff like that through a wall to keep it from bridging. And then just simply resilience in terms of like with your shred shed, it's a standalone building, might have some temperature swings.
Definitely.
Building moves. If you didn't build control joints well, it can handle control joints.
So I didn't know anything about control joints. So I guarantee you I didn't do it well, but I did have acoustical caulk. And so I did the first layer of 5/8 drywall. mudded and taped. And then I caulked all of the seams. Like, I don't even know how much I used. So much caulk.
A lot, yeah.
A lot. Like, I used all of the tubes I bought, and I think I literally got like 100 tubes. And then we did another layer with the drywall running the opposite direction.
So your seams weren't overlapping. Yep.
Exactly. And then the same thing, again, mudded and taped, and then acoustical caulked that again. I wasn't sure. I was reading internet forums, but I did leave gaps, like small gaps on the bottom, top, and corners of all the walls, so that in theory it would, vibrate. That is what I was told. I didn't know. I was really going off of internet wisdom here. I didn't actually know what I was doing. And then we did the fence boards on top of all of it. So it's a pretty heavy
three
wall.
layers. Nice.
Yeah. So
all in all, great job. That as far as home jobs go, that's a pretty good option. The first thing to mention is you have a standalone building, which works wonderful for you. I.e., it has no rigid connection to anything else.
Correct.
If you were throwing an addition on your house, we'd start talking about disconnects and resiliency and flanking paths probably a lot more than a standalone shed. Because building a standalone shed on grade, you don't really have vibration concerns or anything like that. So all in all, that works out really well. Your exterior cladding leaves a little bit to be desired. You're probably well aware of when it's raining.
Actually, no.
No, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Because I guess I should mention the ceiling is separate too. So the roof line inside follows the outside, but it's actually on its own set of framing. So the roof inside is the same as the walls.
Nice.
So it is. So I actually can't hear the rain, which is surprising.
That's nice. So and you have pretty much all the things there. You put the mass in. You made sure it was airtight, and you made sure that you had a disconnect between your outside and inside layers. All those things are mostly what you wanted to do. And you also were smart. And I know we had this discussion offhand. Is you didn't put windows in it.
No, I was like, I knew that was going to be a big leaky point. Because
a common trick is you put up just 2 sets of windows, or you do something like that. Operable windows always leak noise.
Of course.
They just do. So all in all, you did it pretty well. I don't think most people are going to have that option at home.
No.
Most people are probably building out their basement. If they have an unfinished basement, it's great opportunity to put in something, to reuse all the studs and everything that's in the building. However, do something like an isolated channel, something like there's the Plytech Genie clip. There's a ton of other alternates that are a similar kind of product where it's a rubber thing that holds in a steel stud. So it stays decoupled, and then you can put your finish up. You put up your drywall, everything like that. Again, same tricks. Do the gaps around the edges. Put acoustical caulking around it so it's independent. That can give you 5 to 10 points of a performance bump, can save you a layer of drywall in equivalent construction.
Oh, okay.
So from a cost perspective, it's actually really effective. But the problem when you do these disconnects is you're littered with things that could bridge it. And the minute you put a bridging thing in there, your whole isolation system kind of goes kaput. So things like conduit, ducting, I have seen people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on construction and then put recessed lighting in it, which means they just put tons of holes in what they were trying to build. So, that's the average, the average person revamping their basement. And this applies to home theaters. This applies to some dudes put gyms in their basements or rowing machines or those kind of things. And they're loud and they don't want the rest of the house to wake up. Same principles apply there. It's mass and separation. Get a few layers of drywall up. Another fun thing to know when you're doing that, plywood. Back when plywood was cheap.
Yes.
You can sub in a plywood layer if you want to hang things on the wall. You don't have to search for a stud to route everything in. Now, if you do a resilient channel, you don't want to be mounting a TV on that wall into the stud.
Right. Right.
Because now you're going to bridge that construction. So you have those kind of things you got to work around. Since you did a separated stud, that works really well for all your guitar hangers. You actually got to hit a stud.
Well, actually,
I hope you hit a stud. Actually,
panels,
your plank board probably helped you a lot.
The plank board helps a lot. It's all glued and nailed, so it's those things aren't coming off without some serious effort.
Yeah.
But I kind of did that in reverse. I guess I didn't think about it. Instead of putting the piece of plywood in the back of the wall, I put the wood on the outside of the wall. Yeah. So it kind of does the same thing.
Well, and that gave you an aesthetic that worked for you. I work in a world where everyone wants every wall to be perfect and white for whatever reason. So we do that.
Of course.
So it's a blank slate for whatever someone else wants to do. So I mean, yeah, those are the basics. I'll just simply say, don't go head first into this. Plan it. Plan out everything. Mark everything. Know what's going in, because if you do it, if you want to retrofit it later, it's a pain.
Yes, big time.
I'll also just be blunt with your audience. I'm not free.
This is as free as it gets, everybody.
This is about as free as it gets. People like me charge a lot. This is my career. And there's a reason why the buildings I work on cost millions of dollars. They have to be millions of dollars in order for people like me to be on them. Because there has to be margin for somebody like me to come in and work on them. So, I mean, we don't do a lot of residential, I'm doing this kind of thing, unless it's a very eccentric person who's willing to pay for things like that.
I know one of those. Well, I know two of them, counting me, but yeah.
I know a few too. I've put a skateboard ramp in the rooftop of a building before for an investment banker. I've done home theaters on top of high rises in Chicago that are just amazing, but those are millionaires. These are, concert promoter guys who own the city kind of situations.
Right.
So I mean, I hate to slap everyone down, but generally there's not really a lot of ways to do this very cheaply. But
I will say, though, I mean, not that this was the cheapest thing in the world for me to build.
Yeah.
But I was able to build something with, in my opinion, relatively okay performance on a not insane budget by doing a ton of research.
Yes.
I spent hours and hours and hours researching. I didn't know for sure that what I was doing was 100% right, but I also didn't have a Scott to talk to at the time. So I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. My point is, if you really do your research and you really do that planning thing he was talking about, you probably can build yourself a small isolated practice space for not just millionaires' money, Yeah,
and I mean, you started with some really nice things. Again, mentioning you had a standalone building.
Yeah.
That saved you so much effort.
And that was on purpose.
Yeah.
That was because I could have
do it.
I had the space to do it. It was basically unused space in my backyard that I just was like, I'm tired of mowing this. No one even comes back here, But also,
but for the person putting this in their garage,
which was my other option, and I weighed both of those by doing the research and went, this is going to be better for what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, because your garage door is not going to seal up well. It's too hard to get a garage door plumb to where it seals well. Those are the most expensive doors you can buy. Is the acoustically rated garage doors. And
oh man, what's an average standard garage door that size run? Ballpark.
I think the last one we installed, we called it the elephant door, and I think it was somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000.
Woo!
Now bear in mind that thing was like 10 pounds per square foot and big enough to drive a truck through. So think about how much weight that just moving that level of something was.
Right.
So
that's interesting to think that there's somebody with a use case so specific that they couldn't compromise or didn't want to compromise, and we're like, yeah, let's do this $100,000 door versus like most people would be like, let's just seal this up and find another way into the building.
They bought more than one.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. But it was a movie studio.
Oh, okay.
So you got to drive set pieces in and out, and you got to run them all, and you got to be able to be quiet enough on set to keep everything going. So
they didn't have an option. Yeah. This was the only option. Wow. Crazy world we live in. This is all fascinating to me. I know this is like hyper nerdy. This is a hyper nerdy episode, but I get more questions about the shred shed than anything else. And I know we've talked about some very specific things and some kind of higher level things, but hopefully this gave some people a peek into things without getting too over the top.
I mean, can we talk about the entire other side of the world that actually, now that we've just dashed everyone's hope because they don't have $20,000 to $40,000 to invest in something like this?
Sure, let's talk about it.
Buy a Kemper.
And he's not wrong, because back when I built this was right on the cusp of when these things were actually good or not.
Mhm.
Like if I had waited a year to build it, I may not have built it at all. And that ultimately I'm glad I did, especially at the time, because lumber prices and everything, all my materials were way cheaper. But had I had access to a Kemper, even a Helix, or the Neural DSP stuff, I may never have built this. I may still have been in that room, and that probably would have been a more logical decision, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. I'm happy I have it. Don't get me wrong, but it was not a logical decision at the time.
I mean, it's kind of a fun thing of you and me compared. Like we love to do this. Is that I keep looking at all the different silent solutions that I have. So I've messed with a bunch of the different computer plugins. I have a Quad Cortex, I have a Kemper, and I have a 2Notes.
Mm-hmm.
All of these are mainly because one, I play in churches, which I hated using the amp room that we had because it was also the server closet. And I can't run an effects loop off of that amp because it's too far removed and out there in sound, because we want to have a silent stage. And so I switched to a Kemper and then the Quad Cortex, and that gave me a silent solution that I had control over. Also, just better consistency and some of those kind of things. And also now I don't have to haul my 69 Super Reverb up 3 flights of stairs at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. So that all those things are benefiting me. And then the other factor is I also live in a 1-bedroom apartment /loft in a 100-year-old building in Chicago that's made of wood. It creaks, and it's kind of thin walls, and so I need a way to practice guitar that's accurate. And so the way technology has gone, I can record guitars amazingly well at home now without making a peep to anybody else and on headphones. That's really the easiest solution that's there. Just no one likes really admitting that. We all want to still take our 100-watt plexi and crank it to 10 and blow out our eardrums because what we want to do.
Yeah. No, that is a very, very, very good thing to talk about. Like I said, I don't know that I would have done this had the technology been there. And I was not that far away. It was only maybe a year and a half or so before that stuff became more widely available. And if I had known about it, that probably would have been the route I would have went.
Yeah, I mean, the number one album, was it last year, 2 years ago, was when Billie Eilish had the number one album. That was made at Logic in a bedroom using plugins and natural instruments. The XX recorded their debut album in a bedroom. You can do a lot now in your bedroom with everything. And also say like things like vocal booths and things like that. If you have a walk-in closet full of clothes, go put your mic in there. It's a perfectly good at-home vocal booth, as long as you don't have little kids running around or dogs. We call it administrative controls in our field. That's our code term of saying don't make noise. So when we're an emergency backup generator, we don't want to run while we're recording at a place. They won't let us build up the wall. There's budget constraints, yada yada. So we just say, okay, cool. It will be administrative controls, meaning don't run it at the same time, and you won't have a problem. That's sometimes the budget solution, and that's what works. Things don't make noise if they're not making noise. You don't need to build up a wall for something that's not making up noise. So if you need to record, or you're trying to track vocals or whatever, a babysitter might be cheaper than building a vocal booth.
That is a very good point. Work around your constraints, try to figure out ways to mitigate the things that are problems. Like I know for a fact that every Thursday for the 13 years that I've lived at this place. The county building that's next door to me has landscapers come and mow the lawn. So I never try to schedule anything that's really sensitive. If podcast recordings are okay because I have a decent wall between us, but I can still hear it. I can hear it going, but fortunately, I can adjust it. But if I was trying to record a podcast in my house, if I had went the Kemper route, then I would have just said, well, I don't record on Thursdays because the landscapers are going to show up that day for the county and run their air blowers. I would have administratively controlled it is what I would have done.
I mean, 3 weeks ago, I was on site running testing for a litigious project. And that's all I can really say about what that site was. And we're measuring noise in various spaces. And we were paused for an hour because their neighbors had leaf blowers out and we couldn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and to think of the money that was being spent by the guys with leaf blowers.
Right. They didn't even know, probably.
They didn't even know.
They're just
so I mean,
leaves.
those kind of things, those matter. And so like, if you live next door to something that's always making noise and causing problems and intruding on what you're doing, I mean, obviously, one, don't move next door to an airport. I hope everyone realizes that you should never do that, no matter how cheap the property is. It will destroy your life because you can't live with it, and you will soon learn that. But yeah, if you do need to start building up stuff for things that happen regularly or as a real thing, or the other fun one is I want to go watch a movie late at night while the kids are asleep, or I want to go record guitars once the kids are asleep, or I want to go play drums once the kids are asleep. Like all those kind of things.
Yeah.
That's when you need to start thinking about like, I need to build this up. The best thing to ask yourself when you're sitting out doing this is, what can I live with? Because that is a big thing that will help you save your budget, is if you can live with things or work around them or accept the compromises that are there.
Yeah, because it's not reasonable to build a shred shed for most people.
I can't build a shred shed. I have no outdoor space.
Yeah.
And if anything, I don't think my landlord would be happy if I used my parking lot space to put a shed in or something like that. So
yeah,
I don't have that option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could build you a shed inside of your loft apartment, but that might be a little bit inconvenient. But there again, what do you want to deal with? What do you want to deal with? Well, dude, thank you for coming on and talking about all this stuff. Hopefully that was helpful for some people. I imagine it was a little bit of a lot. Yeah, that's not the way to say that, but I imagine it was a lot to chew on for some people. And some of this stuff is hard to visualize when you're only hearing it in audio form, but definitely get online and do some research. There are resources out there. If I was able to find some, you can find them too. And you all can hit me up if you need my, moron advice for anything. I'll do my best.
Well, and also, I mean, just go ahead and start a thread in the Tone Mob. You'll get people that contribute. There's multiple acoustics consultants in that group that I know about. So you got like me and Cole, and you've got, I think there's another one too. So there's a few of us. And
okay,
we happily help on high level. Just don't expect to have an hour-long conference call with us on what you want to do.
You just did. Like this is your conference call.
So I'm billing you. I'll have my team invoice you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and invoice me. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'll have my people get on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Well, let's do this. Let's close this out the classic way. First of all, if you have anything you want to plug, or if you have anybody you want to shout out, if you have anything you want to say to anybody, now is your chance to do so.
One, I'm part of the Effects Loop podcast. Go ahead and check us out there. I think the effectsloop.com is our link tree to everything.
Cool.
So you'll find us there. I'm not going to promote any other thing, I think. The other thing I would just say is, please don't go use fake acoustic panels that light on fire for everyone's safety. That's like the one life safety thing I have to deal with in my engineering career, other than, hanging things from the ceiling and making sure it's rated properly. So be safe with what you're doing, and do it the right way so that you're safe and everything. That's I think that should be paramount in whatever solution you do it for whatever you're doing at home.
That makes
So that's
sense.
an anti-plug, I'll say.
Right. I like it though.
Yeah.
Public safety. Don't use flammable materials around pyrotechnics. There you go.
Especially around all your wiring and these amps that get real hot. All that stuff.
Absolutely. I have a feeling that you've seen some pretty crazy things because you've brought that up multiple times on this episode.
I mean, I if you want a reference, the Great White Fire is a great example of sort of a band from the 80s that was doing a tour. Pyrotechnics set the whole club on fire. Multiple people died. I mean, that was a tragedy on top of tragedy because they had like emergency exits blocked and all that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I don't like seeing that happen, and it feels like it happens every year.
There you go. Don't use it, everybody. All right, here we go. Final questions. First one, what is your favorite Boss pedal?
So I was racking my brain in prep for this one. I only own 3 Boss pedals. Okay. I have a Metal Zone and 2 TU3s.
All right.
And so probably TU3 just based on it's the only Boss pedal on my board.
Okay.
I hate to be boring like that, but that's that. I've wanted a Boss phase shifter for ages because I love Incubus, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on one. But
well, yeah, they're out there when you're ready. So we're gonna go with. He says Metal Zone. That is his favorite, and we're gonna move on swiftly.
A legitimately fun pedal.
It is. It really is.
Spend $40 and have fun.
Yes, it's a blast, and also just like play with that EQ. You'll find some stuff in there.
There's a lot of room in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, final question. Here we go. And I know you're from Chicago, so this is going to be interesting.
Yep.
What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Is this where we dispel the myth that Chicagoans eat deep dish pizza once a week? Because we don't. We only eat it when friends are in town. That's the only time we go. It's too heavy. The deep dish pizza is amazing. It's in my blood. It's part of what I am. And my favorite deep dish pizza is Pequod's, is pepperoni pizza because they're generous with it. Okay. And it's a neighborhood favorite for people who live in Lincoln Park, neighborhood of Chicago. About halfway through your second slice, you're like, what am I doing to myself?
So much cheese.
Yeah. So my current favorite pizza is the prosciutto and egg pizza from Stella Barra in Lincoln Park. It's a Neapolitano style brick oven thing, and they crack an egg halfway through. So it's a runny egg in the middle of the pizza.
Oh, that sounds so good.
So you cut it and you dip it in the yolk the entire time.
Yes, please. Sign me up for that. That sounds fantastic. Oh, yeah. I love that. Oh, I haven't had lunch, so that sounds even better right now. Woo! That's fantastic. So I know we're a little bit over the normal time, but I want to get into this real quick because you are a Chicagoan. Is that the right term? Chicagoan?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. So you may have heard me talk about this before on the podcast, maybe not, but we have a very Portland thing here, but it's from Chicago. So there's a man named Jerry, and Jerry is from Chicago, and he grew up eating tavern pizza, the thin cracker crust stuff. There isn't anywhere in town that does that. Like we have some really amazing pizza here in Portland. Nowhere does that. So Jerry in 2020 during lockdown it's like, well, I'm locked down. What am I going to do? I guess I'll try to perfect this tavern style pizza in my kitchen. And this man has never made pizza before, but he had nothing but time on his hands. So he spent that time perfecting his tavern style pizza recipe. So he started posting them on Instagram, and they looked so good. People just lost their mind. And he soon was literally like, you DM him, get on the list, and he'll make you a pizza in his kitchen, and you could come pick it up. All this is probably not legal, I'm assuming. I think at a certain scale, it stops being legal. I think it's okay, I'm not sure.
As long as like in Chicago, we have the tamale guy. I don't know if you've heard of this guy before, but there's this guy who goes to every single dive bar in a slough with a cooler full of homemade tamales.
We have one of those around here too. Yeah. We had a tamale lady. She showed up to the Benson shop one day, just like a cooler full of tamales. It was wonderful.
Okay.
But Jerry started doing this, and then it got too big. So He moved into a small kitchen at a local bar. Every Saturday, he opens up orders. Within 2 minutes, he's completely sold out for the next week. And you have to, because I did get on the DM list, I got a little bit of early access, so I got to have one. One of the best pizzas I've ever had in my life. But what I want to know is this really like, is this like, some people have said when they've heard about this, like, oh, there's such a Portland hipster thing. I can't believe this guy's got this wait list for pizza that we have on every corner in Chicago. And I have a hard time imagining that it's this good. This pizza is very, very good. And I've had a lot of pie in my life. So tell me about the tavern style pizza. And is this an overblown thing that we're just making into something it's not?
So I'll be honest, I never heard the phrase Chicago tavern style pizza until you started talking about it.
Okay.
And then I looked at it and went, oh, that's just pizza you get at a bar. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
have tons of dive bars all over the place that have kitchens in them, and they'll make pizzas in them, and they're that style.
Mhm.
And some are good and some are absolutely terrible, but I wouldn't say there's like a tavern style pizza like consistency. It's not like Chicago style hot dog is like a really defined thing.
Mhm.
You know, it's poppy seed bun, it has to be a Vienna beef hot dog, it has to have sport peppers, the awful neon green relish and mustard and celery salt, right? Like that is a Chicago hot dog. And so if you go to Portillo's, you go to any of the Chicago Italian beef places or anything like that, a Chicago dog is a Chicago dog. And it's
Mhm.
fairly consistent everywhere because everyone's using a Vienna beef hot dog and they're all using a Toronto bun. So it's like, it's all the same ingredients for the most part. It's just whoever made it, wherever it is.
Gotcha.
Tavern style pizza is really a product of wherever it is.
Okay. So like it's wherever Jerry grew up.
So
basically.
Jerry
It's a
had an amazing local spot that did something really good.
Okay. That makes sense. Cause like, I mean, I think this is true literally everywhere. We have bars that have food too, you know, and they have kitchens. And honestly, unless it's a gastropub or something, most of the time it's like, But-
It's easier to get a liquor license if you have a kitchen.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things. I just wasn't sure. Like basically anytime that restaurant, well, I guess it's just really just
Mhm.
Jerry. Anytime Jerry gets brought up in pizza media, there's always people from Chicago saying like, what do you mean? We have that on every corner. And I'm like, do you really have this on every corner?
I mean, a lot of the neighborhood pizza spots kind of are like that too.
Mhm.
That kind of style. So, I mean, again, we don't eat deep dish all the time. There's actually a very like the deep dish places are where you have the long waits here because it takes 45 minutes to make one.
And the tourists they're clogging up the lines, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you buy out a Planet Hollywood and change it into a pizza place, that shows you how much tourists come to see it.
Right. Which one is that?
That is Gino's East.
Okay.
Bought out.
Okay.
So Gino's East is the famous one where you could write on the wall.
Yes.
And it's just graffiti everywhere. And then they open up a Planet Hollywood and they fake all the graffiti there. And everyone got all mad that they brought in like these artists to like fake the graffiti to keep the vibe the same. But that's the cool place where you can get the patty style topper of sausage.
Ooh.
So it's an absolute gut bomb, but it's good.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they did the skit, you know. How many heart attacks I make for you, Bob? Well, it's about a baker's dozen. That's all that pizza, you know.
That the super fans thing is way more real than you realize for the outsiders.
I believe it.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me for some reason. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was an informative episode, I think. At least it was for me. And so surely for other people it is too.
I'm really looking forward to the this guy doesn't know what he's talking about thread that's going to come in the Tone Mob group.
I'm looking forward to the I nailed packing foam up and it totally changed. My wife can't even hear it. It's like, oh, okay, sure. But yeah, everybody, that's a good plug for the Facebook group, which I haven't done in a while. We'll do right now. Join the Tone Mob Facebook group and you can come make fun of Scott and I, which will be just really fun. All right, dude. Thank you so much. For Scott, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right. There you go. Well, if you liked this episode, the subscriber/patron exclusive Apple subscriber or Patreon has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we talked about on this episode, but it is a deep dive into some pretty heavy topics. It starts off kind of light and kind of, nonsensical, as so many of them do, but Scott and I really dive into some pretty heavy territory, some of which I'm probably not qualified to talk about, but I do anyway. I guess that's never stopped me before. So if you would like to hear that and help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/tonemob, or if you're an Apple subscriber, you can check out the subscribe button in the Apple Podcast app. I know that's kind of a confusing new thing. A lot of you have been subscribed, quote unquote, forever. Apple's changed their nomenclature around recently to where subscribers from years past are now followers, and subscribers are supporters of the show that get that exclusive content that pops up in that feed. So if that is something you would like to do, that is a way to get extra content and help keep this thing going. And I super appreciate it. And if you could, please share this with a friend. Share this show with somebody you think would enjoy it. Or share it with somebody that you don't like and you thought this was terrible. If you thought this was awful and you're still listening to this at this point, share this with your worst enemy. Send it to them. They'll dislike you even more. I don't know. That's a terrible plug, but it's a plug regardless. I got to try everything. Us podcasters have to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. So supporting your enemies, lapse into, I don't know, madness is something that you think this show can help do, then there you go. Share it with somebody. Got to get them sweet downloads. And if you're a podcaster or somebody who has a heavy audio editing load, please check out my dude Nick at Playback Engineering. He makes this thing possible. He has for years. I know you've heard his name occasionally, but you've got to check him out. If you need help with any audio needs, please hit up my dude Nick at Playback Engineering. He will help you out. Okay, that's it for the plugs. We got to run out. We got to go. We got to live life. We got to create music. We got to do something other than sit in this dark cave and talking to this microphone. Actually, I'm going to do that a whole lot more in just a second. I've got an interview scheduled. But I hope you had a happy Halloween. I hope you all are safe. And I'll talk to you very soon. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.